Ches. The Rambam says, "Kiven shegiya soil midbo." As soon as this Kohen Gadol has seen the sign that the soil has arrived at the midbo, Yotze Kohen Gadol, and we'll go down below. Yotze Kohen Gadol le'ezras hanoshim likoi b'Torah. Kohen Gadol would go to the Ezras Noshim, which is outside of the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash. It's just below it, 15 steps. Likoi b'Torah, to read the Torah. The Griz cites at the end of his Sefer on the Rambam, his first letter, the name of his father, that this is all year as well, and everything that was done in the Mikdash, the Kohen who does the service, he's not allowed to leave, only has to remain in the Azor until it completes itself. Therefore, the Mishnah tells us that they told the Kohen Gadol that the Soyer came to the Midbar, and therefore that mitzvah was completed. Therefore, he's allowed to leave the Chutz, the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash, and go to the outer courtyard, which is called Ezras Noshim, in order to read the Torah. Because we said he has to do it in a certain order, he has to know. This is the reason he has to know that the service was completed. Otherwise, he can't leave the Azorah. Before we learned, then after Kohen Gadol gave over the goat to the person who brought it to the Azazel, he would go back and to the par and the soya that are slaughtered, that would take out the innards and put them in a vessel, and he would send the rest of the body of the carcass of the animal, of the goat and bull and the goat, to be taken out to be burnt. That's before even the goat comes to the desert. And Marie Korkus points out that from the moment he gave it over, he could do that, and that is considered having accomplished the mitzvah of sending. And he points out in Halacha Zayin that Rashi in the Mishnah on Samach Ches on the Beis disagrees, because he explains the reasoning is when the Soyer came to the Mizbah, because you can't start at something else, because and then you take the innards and bring them up on the Mizbeach. So Mary Korka says it could be that Hamashi will also admit that he can take it out and put them in a vessel and to send out the meat to be burnt, not because the mitzvah has been completed, because it's not one of these services. It something has to be done, but it's not an essential service. And the Rabbeinu Chaim HaLevi says that the Kohen Gadol has to remain in the Azorah. He can't leave the Azorah until the Shiluach HaSoyer. That he cannot do, but he can take out the innards and he can send the meat to be burnt, even though the Soyer has not arrived in the Midbar yet, and it's not considered an avodah. It's not considered a part of the service, which is ma'akiv. Ubizman kriyosoi. At the time he's reading, at that same time, they're burning the bull and the goat from which the blood was taken for the Chatos Lashem. They are being consumed in fire in the area called Beis HaDeshen, outside of Yerushalayim. And therefore, therefore, somebody who was present at the time that the Kohen Gadol is in the Ezras Noshim, and he's reading the Torah, he cannot see the par and the soya that you're burned, because they're in two different places. You can't be simultaneously in two different places. The source is in Yuma, and it's not because he's not permitted, but it's a long way between them. And they're considered at one time. There's a great distance between the Ezras Noshim where they burn the soya. If you can't possibly be in both places. The Gemara in 70a points out that if one could do so, he would be permitted to do so. So obviously, the question is, what's wrong? Well, obviously, what's the thought that's being taught? And he answers that the thought is that you usually don't bypass one mitzvah for the other. That means if you're doing one mitzvah, you should not leave it to do another mitzvah. Now, when you see the Kohen Gadol reading the Torah or the Sefer Zapar V'Soya, then at that moment in time, the more people that are assembled is a greater glory for Hashem. And therefore, the Chiddush is that he can go from one to the other. It's not considered that he's leaving, minimizing the amount of people at one place, since he's not doing the mitzvah himself. He's only viewing it, viewing the people who do the mitzvah. Therefore, he can go from one to the other. And they can be burned not by Kohanim, as in Ma'aser HaKavon is the right in Perek Zayin Halacha Hey. The Rambam writes, that anything that has to be burned can be done by a non-Kohen, and even at night. All the chatois that have to be burned because their owner died, or etc., and also the par and the soya of Yom Kippur, also the bull and the goat of Helm Dover, when the tzibur did an avera, they are all considered inner chatois, that their blood is sprayed and they are burnt outside. We should point out why the Rambam say here that you can do it with a stranger, and you don't have to do it. And he doesn't mention that you can do it at night. The Meir Ponim on the Yerushalmi writes that since the Rambam wrote that the burning of the par and the soya on Yom Kippur is done at the same time, so obviously it wasn't done at night. Furthermore, we should point out in Hilchos Pura, when it comes to the burning of the Pura Aduma, the Rambam brings a halacha, an additional one, which has to do with the sending out of the soya, the burning of the par soya, which we learned from Kabbalah. We have accepted, such as tradition, such as those who carry the bodies of the par, the bull, and the goat to be burned become tummy, and their garments become tummy minat Torah, as long as he's walking with them. Or the one who takes the soya la'azozel, he also it causes to be defiled, every garment and every vessel that he touches it, as long as he's doing his work, as it says, and the one who sends it has to cleanse, which means immerse in a mikveh, his garments. The Chavetz Chaim Likutei Halachos points out that the Rambam here wrote, when the goat comes to the midbar, to the desert, that he doesn't have to come all the way to the precipice, that you push it over. And the difference is what we learned. When can the Kohen Gadol go out to read the Torah? See, Yitzchak points out from Rashi, according to the Tanna Kama, you have to wait until you get to the cliff. And he asks, why didn't the Rambam explain that you have to wait till you get to the cliff? Furthermore, he asks in the Gemara, in Samach Zayin Beis, the Loshen Azozel is translated as meaning as, which is very hard, as brazen and hard. Yochel b'yisha, I think, in an area that's populated. It says midbar. How do I know it has to be a cliff? It says gzera. What does gzera mean? It doesn't mean only cut, like a cut in the ground. Rashi explains that it's a cliff. It's not an incline. This the Rambam didn't mention, but he says to the midbar alone, and he doesn't explain why. The Peirush also doesn't answer it. The Mishnah B'Yuma says, and the kevesh also lo yivnei, that when he took out the scapegoat, they had to make a special ramp for him to walk on, because the Bavlion would pull at the hair of the goat and say tul v'tzei, tul v'tzei. The Rambam mentions this in Hilchos Kolim, when he makes the order of all the things that are done with the money of Trumas Halishko, that this is one of them, building this ramp.